I want you all to know that I would not be doing this if I didn't think I could do a really good job at being President of the United States. I've been an entrepreneur my entire life. Since I've been 17 years old, I've paid for everything that I've had in my entire life. When I was a junior here at the University of New Mexico, 1974, I thought I would strike out on my own, and so I had my brother, who's now a cardiothoracic surgeon, but I had my brother hand out circulars door to door. College student needs work. We'll do carpentry, painting, cement, anything and everything. Well, I started out that one-man handyman business here in Albuquerque in 1974. And in 1994, I actually had 1,000 employees, electrical, mechanical, pitching. It's just a testament to what happens when you show up on time, when you do what you say you'll do for people, when you do a little bit more than what you say you'll do for people. Now, I sold that business in 1999. Nobody lost their job, and they're doing better than ever. It allows me to have a full-time, unpaid job running for President of the United States. I also want you all to know that I'm an athlete, and in that context, I have a goal to climb the highest mountain on each continent. Now, I've had the good fortune to actually summit Mount Everest, and I want to tell you, and this is who I am. I did not conquer Mount Everest. Nobody conquers Mount Everest. That life is a journey. It's not a destination. If you make life a destination, you're just bound to be disappointed. And I know you're not asking me for my advice, and so I'm going to give you some advice that's worth exactly what you're paying for. You're paying nothing for it. And that is, whatever your expertise is, whatever it is, I would just ask you to apply it entrepreneurially. Go into business for yourself. You will find the rewards 100 times that of going to work for somebody else. So that's my suggestion to all of you. But back to Mount Everest. I didn't conquer Mount Everest. We didn't think we were going to summit. The weather went clear. She made it go clear. She lifted her skirt, gave us a peek, and we were really, really fortunate, okay? But prior to going to Mount Everest, I broke my leg. It was a full fracture of the tibia, and the doctor said, hey, you can still go to Everest, but no painkillers, no anti-inflammatories, no cast, and I'm going to give you a bone healing device an experimental bone healing device that actually works. Now, in our lives, this is just a story of all of our lives. Everything that we ever plan to do doesn't go according to plan. And at that point, we can either crawl up and lay on the couch, or we can recognize that these things do happen. Everything we ever do, things get in the way. And you can take those things that get in the way, and you can just accept them and move on. And so in this case, it was moving on. And I just want you all to know that there is no quit in the guy that you're listening to right now. No quit. Okay? New Mexico. You know, I ran completely outside of politics running for governor of New Mexico. I went and I introduced myself to John Latuzio, who was the chairman of the Republican Party in New Mexico, 2 weeks before I announced my candidacy for governor. And what he said was, wow, Gary, I like you. I like what you've got to say. You know, we're totally inclusive here. We're going to include you in everything. You can come to all the meetups. You can take part in all the debates, all the discussions. Make your case to the Republican Party as to why you should be governor. We'll see how that goes, he said. But I got to tell you, there is no way that you're going to be the next governor of New Mexico because the state's registration is 2-1 Democrat. And it's just not going to happen. But have fun. Well, I got elected. I'd like to think it was what I had to say, which was bring a common sense business approach to state government. Best product, best service, lowest price. Let's keep government out of the bedroom. Less government is better government. During that first primary, I was accused of being the Libertarian candidate for governor of New Mexico. Well, as governor of New Mexico, I think I distinguished myself in a number of categories, but one of them was I may have vetoed more legislation than the other 49 governors in the country combined. I vetoed 750 bills. I had thousands of line item vetoes. I took line item veto to a new art form. Only 2 were overridden, so it made a difference when it came to billions of dollars worth of spending, and it made a difference when it came to laws that Santa Fe passed that, in my opinion, were just going to add time and money to our lives, weren't going to make us any safer, weren't going to make us any more healthy. They were just going to add time and money, and I vetoed that legislation. Now, when I vetoed all this legislation, the sky was going to fall. I mean, there were going to be dying in the streets. People were going to go hungry. Schools were going to shut down. But none of that happened. And I think the biggest thing that happened was that people of New Mexico, in a state that was 2-1 Democrat, voted to re-elect me by a bigger margin the second time than the first time. I just think it speaks volumes to the fact that people really do appreciate good stewardship of tax dollars. I was an equal opportunity vetoer as governor of New Mexico. I vetoed. The legislature in New Mexico is a third Republican. A third of my vetoes were Republican. My favorite bill that I vetoed was a Republican bill that, but for my signature, would have been law in New Mexico, which was a dog and cat exercise bill. It was going to require pet stores to exercise their dogs and cats 2 hours a day, 3 times a week. Now, I have to tell you, I think this is a great idea. I think it's a wonderful business practice. But in my veto message, I said, look, great idea, great business practice. This is where I want to buy my dogs and cats. But if I sign this legislation, the next thing I'm going to have to do is fund the dog and cat exercise police, and I don't want to do that. The unintended consequence of government. So, over the last year, there have been a couple of studies and one poll done that I think is significant in this presidential race. They did a poll of all the presidential candidates and the favorabilities in his or her own state. Do you know there is only one presidential candidate running in this cycle that is viewed favorably in his or her own state, and that's me, and I thank you all. I have to tell you, people really do wave at me with all 5 fingers, not just one. And then they did a study in New Mexico. They did a study of all the presidential candidates and who had the best record when it came to job creation. Well, that was me. And here's what I said then, and here's what I said as governor of New Mexico. I did not create one single job as governor of New Mexico. The private sector creates jobs. But I controlled all the agencies. I appointed the heads of all the agencies. I appointed the boards and commissions. I controlled all rules and regulations. And I want to suggest to you that there was certainty in New Mexico. And that certainty created an environment where more jobs were created while I was governor than any other politician in this presidential race right now. Another study that came out, and I think I'm really proud of this, the ACLU, whether you love them or hate them, I always found them to be right. But the ACLU, a group that stands up for the United States Constitution, a group that stands up for the first 10 amendments of the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, a group that is adamant in protecting our civil liberties, last December came out with a report card on all of the presidential candidates. 24 Liberty torches was a perfect score. This is important. Mitt Romney and Rick Santorum had 0 liberty torches out of 24. Newt Gingrich had 4 liberty torches out of 24. Barack Obama had 16 liberty torches out of 24. Ron Paul had 18 liberty torches out of 24. Yeah. And Gary Johnson had 21 liberty torches. So right now, there are other third-party candidates, all right? But no other third party comes close to 50-state ballot access. And right now, we are on the ballot in 47 states and the District of Columbia, and we are going to be at least on 2 of the remaining 3 states. We're litigated in all 3 states. So when I talk about my opponents, I'm talking about Mitt Romney and Barack Obama because no other third party comes close to 50-state ballot access. Putting this into perspective, the Green Party, I believe, is going to be on the ballot in 30 states. I believe the Constitution Party, the Reform Party, is going to be on the ballot in 10 states. Now, I could be off, but my point here is that there really are only 3 candidates on the ballot in all 50 states. So what you didn't hear in the debates, and what you're not going to hear, or what you hear from me is that I'm the only candidate that does not want to bomb Iran. Two-year bombing maintenance program of Iran. The largest demonstration in the world in support of the United States after 9/11 was in Iran, where over 1 million demonstrators showed up in support of the United States in Tehran. And we're going to bomb the citizens of Iran? We bomb Iran, we're going to find ourselves with another 100 million enemies to this country that we wouldn't otherwise have. And these economic sanctions that we have set on Iran, right now Iran's inflation rate is running at 70%, and it's because of this embargo that we have implemented. Do they hate their government because of this inflation? No, they hate the United States because we have instigated this. So how about the notion of trading with Iran? Were we going to bomb China when they were developing a nuclear weapon, or did we engage in trade with China? And I refuse to accept that China is a threat, given that we are so intertwined from a trade standpoint. I am the only candidate. I am the only candidate that wants to get out of Afghanistan now and bring the troops out now. You know what the root of all evil is? The root of all evil are politicians that beat their chests, and in the name of electing me or re-electing me, we're going to take on the war on terror. And in that name, we end up killing tens of thousands of innocent civilians in these countries where we militarily intervene. Our men and servicewomen come back in body bags or with their limbs blown off. And at the root of all that are politicians. We need to stop our military interventions and the fact that we have hundreds of millions of enemies in this country that would not exist but for those military interventions. That marriage equality is constitutionally guaranteed. That it is a federal issue, it's not a state's issue, it's a federal issue, and it's on par with civil rights of the 60s. I am the only candidate running for President of the United States that wants to end the drug wars now. Let's legalize marijuana now. Americans now support legalizing marijuana. Why do they support legalizing marijuana? Because we're talking about it. And we should have a raging debate and discussion over this issue. It's on the ballot this fall in Colorado to regulate marijuana like alcohol. I think it's going to pass. And let's not forget that 6 years ago, Denver voted to decriminalize marijuana on a campaign based on marijuana being safer than alcohol. Colorado gets it. I think Colorado is going to be the first of 50 state dominoes that are going to fall, that we are going to adopt rational drug policy in this country. Rational drug policy starts with looking at drugs first as a health issue rather than a criminal justice issue. 90% of the drug problem is prohibition-related, not use-related, and that's not to discount the problems with use and abuse, but that should be the focus. And the reality is, when everybody in the country gets on an airplane over the weekend to go to Denver to chill out, that's when the other 49 states fall in line with all of us. How would it have worked if we would have had a president in office, or have a president in office, that would veto bills, that would have no aversion to vetoing bills? Well, if I would have been president after 9/11, I would have vetoed the Patriot Act. Homeland Security, incredibly redundant. TSA, let's leave airport security to the airports, to the airlines, to the municipalities, to the states, but not the federal government. And you know what? If I am president of the United States and Congress refuses to abolish the TSA, because I would control the TSA, because I would control rules and regulations, I guarantee you, in a very, very short amount of time, TSA would be less intrusive and as safe, and we would all notice it. I am the only candidate. Barack Obama signed the National Defense Authorization Act. Romney said he would have done the same. I would have vetoed the National Defense Authorization Act. Which allows for you and I, as U.S. citizens, to be arrested and detained without being charged. This is why we fought wars in this country. And then the debate last Wednesday. What you didn't hear was a third voice on stage that would have said, we need to balance the federal budget now. To submit a balanced budget to Congress in the year 2013. Can you imagine how contentious that document is going to be? Can you imagine the debate, the raging debate and discussion that will go on nationwide that needs to take place? Obama and Romney were on stage arguing over who's going to spend more money on Medicare when we have to slash Medicare spending. We have to, we know it. If we continue to borrow and print money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar that we spend, we will experience a monetary collapse. It's going to happen. It's baked in the numbers. And a monetary collapse, very simply, is when the dollars we have in our pocket don't buy a thing because of the accompanying inflation that's going to go along with borrowing and printing money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar that we spend. So when anybody falls off their chair when you talk about a 43% reduction to Medicare, the alternative is no Medicare. And it means taking on the entitlements. It means Medicare, Medicaid, Social Security is absolutely savable. It is a problem that is pale in comparison to Medicare, and it also means reducing military spending by 43%. Nobody's talking about that. Nobody. And the Can we even increase our spending for defense? Probably so, but defense is the operative word, not offense and not nation building. We need to take spending levels when it comes to the military back to 2003, which is a 43% reduction in military spending, and recognize that the biggest threat to our national security is the fact that we continue to borrow and print money to the tune of 43 cents out of every dollar that we do spend. I'm the only candidate advocating eliminating income tax, corporate tax, abolishing the IRS, and replacing all of that with one federal consumption tax. In this case, I am embracing the fair tax. It will really... It will reboot the American economy for the next 100 years. We're going to bleed out all existing federal tax out of all existing goods and services. It's really the answer to making our exports 23% more competitive. It's the answer to China. Tariffs are not the answer when it comes to China. Free market approaches are the answer when it comes to China. And it's really the answer when it comes to jobs. Here you have Obama and Romney talking about 27% corporate tax rate, 25% corporate tax rate. I don't know, I just get lost in it. How about if lowering the corporate tax rate is a good thing that we can agree on? Why not take it to zero? If we take it to zero, tens of millions of jobs will be created by the private sector in this country. And if it doesn't create tens of millions of jobs, there's nothing we can do to create tens of millions of jobs. Manufacturing jobs will flock back to the United States, given a zero corporate tax rate environment. I'm the only candidate running for president that would abolish the Federal Reserve if given that legislation. Well in this country. Treasury prints money, they give it to the Federal Reserve, the Federal Reserve gives the money to the banks at 0%. Do we get the money? No. Because the banks buy up treasuries in a closed loop and make profit taking no risk. And we put the profit for all this. This is an inside game, and this is what exists in America today, is crony capitalism. It is alive and well. Adopt the fair tax. Half of Washington lobbyists will get the pink slips because that's why they're there, to garner loopholes that both parties are selling. Let's just eliminate the possibility of doing that in person. I ran 2 campaigns for governor where I did not mention my opponent in print, radio, or television. I implore Romney and Obama to stop with the negative ads. Really, don't we want to vote for somebody as opposed to the lesser of two evils? I saw where Obama ran 82,000 negative ads against Romney last month. Well, don't you know that Romney did the same? We're hungry for solution. We're hungry for the debate and the discussion that needs to take place in this country over really, really serious issues that we can no longer dig our heads in the sand over any longer. Barack Obama, I have to tell you, everything out of Barack Obama's mouth is like music to me. I liken it to a violin. He's playing his violin, the words come out. How can you disagree with anything it is that he says? I find it really difficult. It's just that the words don't match up with the reality at all, in any way whatsoever. As an example, he explicitly promised that he would not crack down on medical marijuana facilities. That if legislatures or citizens voted to implement these programs in their own states, I promise I'm not going to direct a single federal dollar in enforcing federal law. Well, he's flown in the face of that. He's cracking down on medical marijuana facilities in California and in Colorado. Mitt Romney, in the second debate said, it's a no-brainer that we should build a fence across the border. You are listening to someone who, based on that, has not one molecule of brain. Building a fence across the border would be an incredible waste of time and money. Let's make it as easy as possible for somebody who wants to come into this country and work to get a work visa. Not a green card, not citizenship, but a work visa. And recognize that immigration is really a good thing. Let's not break up families that are in the United States by deporting them. Let's keep those families together and document those families. Document those workers. And then they talk about border violence. Border violence is a prohibition phenomenon. Legalize marijuana and arguably 75% of the border violence with Mexico goes away. 40,000 deaths south of the border over the last 4 years. These are disputes that are being played out with guns rather than the courts. Let's bring an end to that. So here we are. Here we are. We are at a crossroads in this country. We all recognize that we have incredible issues facing us, that the country is in really, really deep trouble. And does anybody think that we can solve this by increasing spending for the military, become more involved when it comes to military intervention, that we need more of a heightened police state, and that we can continue to borrow and spend money in an unsustainable way? No, none of us believe that, and yet they would have us believe that Santa Claus is coming, that the Easter Bunny, by extension, is also coming, and by extension, the Tooth Fairy is going to show up. Well, it's not going to happen. This is something that we have to take control of. This is something that we have to address, and if we don't do it, we find ourselves without a country. So you all have to hear it. You have to hear it every single day. Wasted vote. Why are you going to waste your vote? What is more of a wasted vote than voting for somebody you don't believe in? We vote for the person that we most believe in, and that's how we change things in America.